Hello everyone, just doing the standard sound check to make sure everything's working. If it is, if someone could just pop a message in the live chat for me, that'd be really appreciated. And I will see you at 7:30. Bye for now. Hello. Hello everyone, welcome to the 50th edition of Ian's Studio Live. I got a little overexcited there and cut in over the top of the music. I've just noticed a comment in the chat, Raymond saying that he has got no sound. At the point when he typed that, I don't think there was anything audio going out. But if you can't hear this, Raymond, do let me know. Could people confirm there really is sound? Let's put it that way around and we can get started. So, welcome to the 50th edition of the live stream. If you can hear me, and I hope you can, I did do a sound check earlier and my levels on here are saying I'm broadcasting sound. So we'll just have to wait and see on that. But assuming you can hear me, Raymond now saying that the sound is okay. Right, okay, let me just explain. When I have the opening slideshow at the beginning, I don't put music over it, I just let that run in silence. I suppose I could put music over it, but silence works for me on there. Great, everyone's saying sounds good. Okay, let's get on after that minor panic at the beginning there. Yeah, welcome to the show. It is our 50th, our half century on these, and so I'm doing a Lightroom Performance special. Purely coincidence that it happens to fall on this one, to be perfectly honest with you. But that's what we're going to look at. If you are new to the show or if you're watching, do say hi in the live chat if you're able to. It'd be good to know who's there, who's watching it. And take a moment to hit the subscribe button, please. And that way you'll get notified of future live streams. You'll get notified of content going up onto the channel and things like that. And if you're watching this on replay, do pop me a comment in the comments field. Or if you're watching any of the other videos that aren't live, do add a comment. Again, it's all to do with engagement. And there's so much I want to do with the channel to help you with your photography that I'm only going to be able to do if I get to a level where I can start attracting interest from some of the bigger players, put it that way. I know what I want to do, but at the moment I don't have a large enough audience to be able to approach for sponsorship and goods and things that I can give away. I want to do some giveaways, but I haven't got the contacts yet. So I need to grow the audience first. So just dropping comments on videos just tells that YouTube algorithm that this is a channel worth presenting to people. And the likes do as well. Now we have a weekly challenge on the Sunday to try and beat 17 likes before I get to the end of the introduction. Well, we've only got 14 viewers, so that ain't gonna happen, is it? And 9 likes at the moment. So the rest of you go and hit the like button. Right, let's move on. If you don't know about the shows, they're twice weekly. Sunday night, I pick a topic and talk about it. On the Wednesday, I provide feedback on your photography, your images, and those are either sent to me through feedback@ianstudio.co.uk, and I look at that a couple of times a week to see what's been sent there. And I do it as a separate email, so it's separate from everything else on that. And I also pick images from my Facebook group, which I'll talk about in a moment. And the shows stay on YouTube, and eventually I'm editing them down, and full versions go into my academy. If you find the shows helpful, either Sunday nights or Wednesday nights, and you want to contribute, and I've got to say a big thank you to everybody who has. I'm gradually working my way down the list of people for the very special thank you. But if you do want to contribute financially to keeping these going, that's the link over my shoulder. It's basically BuyMeACoffee that a lot of YouTubers use, except I don't drink coffee, mine's tea. So buymeatea.com/Ian Butty, link down below in the description on there. And a special thank you tonight to Anthony Barker for tonight's cuppa. Don't know if you're watching tonight, Anthony, but Cheers. I also try to say thank you to everyone, not only through the putting the name on the cuppa, but where I've got something I can give away as a little bonus to do with the live stream. The people who've donated through the Buy Me a Cuppa campaign will get first dibs at that. And to this week, I've got a copy of my crib sheet. These are my notes for tonight. With performance being an important thing, I had it all written out here for reference in case I need it. And that PDF, I've converted it into a PDF. I've emailed it out to everyone who's recently bought me a cuppa, and anyone else who buys me a cuppa between now and next Saturday. I will also forward this on to you as well. So if you find that helpful, hopefully you'll find it helpful, those extra notes as to what's going on here. It's just my way of saying thank you for it. And basically, Buy Me a Cuppa, it counts as a credit, and I keep a tally of those, and you'll get the gifts when they come out, so the little things like that. So anyway, the Facebook group, I think I need to change the order because I end up talking about it earlier these days. The Facebook group, that's the link. That's where you can share your photos, where I pick them up for feedback on Wednesday. It's where we're running photo challenges, such as the bingo one at the moment, and where I generally give you information about what's going on, such as new live streams and when the new ones are coming up, things like that. We change the banner each week on there. This is the current one, which was John Bamber's Arctic Hare, and I will be changing it after the show tonight, and wonder whether you can work out whose image it's going to be this week. A rather unusual one this week, so stay tuned to the very end when I will reveal whose image it will be. Will it be yours? Right, so I also have a newsletter, which is there. And what have we got on the show tonight? Well, it's very simple, very straightforward. It's live Q&A and it's Lightroom Performance. So the questions can be anything photography related, but particularly if it's Lightroom, I want to try and talk about it tonight. I've got a couple to mention in the Q&A. So that's what we're doing tonight. We haven't beaten the record on there. Not to worry, we'll get there. We've got 15 concurrent viewers according to mine and 9 likes. Well, maybe next week. I see Walter suggesting percentages, but I can't do the maths on the fly. I can do hard numbers on the fly, and besides which, what I really want to do is get the number of viewers up. It's that as much as anything else. So yeah, that's it. It's all a little bit of fun, just to encourage you to go and hit that button for me. Right, so live Q&A. If you've got questions, stick them in the live chat. I will pick them up. If you are watching on replay, pop it in the comments. I do read all the comments. I do reply to all the comments. I think I'm up to date at the moment, but I do go through every so often and double check on that. Or you can email them to me during the week. Contact me at ians-studio.co.uk on there. Well, before we go into that, I have had a couple of questions coming in already. Gary wants to know whether there is a way to add a border around an image in Lightroom when you export it. The answer to that is yes. And the other question, no. What I'm going to do is I'm going to pull up Lightroom on here and see whether I've got everything installed to be able to do this. And I haven't got it installed. Let me. No, I can't demo this one, and I can't, off the top of my head, think what the the plugin's called, let me just try and find the name of the plugin that we're looking at, and I will cover it next Sunday on there, unless I can find it and get it installed straight away. Plugins. Yeah, that's it. The plugin you're looking for, Gary, is called LRMogrify, which will allow you to do it. It does take a little bit of setting up because you have to get a utility called Mogrify set up as well. What I can do, I'll move over so you can see what's going on my screen. So there we go. Actually, if I, oh, that's a bit on the small side, that screen. Let's go on. Something went wrong during the week. I was doing a different thing. So I do that. What happens if I, oh no. Right, okay. Just a moment, folks. Just bear with me. You know, it's the first week I have never pulled up the Lightroom. I've never done a Lightroom check on the to make sure that everything displayed well. 50 weeks and I've not needed to do anything. And the 1 week I don't do the check, I do need to adjust it. Right. So, oh bother. Right. Hang on. Bear with me. To eek. Yeah, right, now put that one back to there. So we've got that, which now means if I do that, yes, you've got the full screen, which is what I wanted. Right, okay, now it's messed up my other display. Right, that's better. Okay, so now you can see what I've got on the screen here. I've got a folder of plugins for Lightroom, and they are all things ending in .lr plugin. And this is probably worth going through anyway about how you add plugins into Lightroom. So the one you're looking for is this one, LRMogrify 2. Chances are I haven't got the latest version here, but this should do it. So now if I head over to the Lightroom window and File and Plugin Manager and Add, and then I go into the Lightroom folder, so Plugins, and I select LRMogrify. And it's just, you just select the folder, and the thing that has to be installed is Mogrify. Now I don't know whether I've got Mogrify installed on this machine, so it may not work. But right, that's now in there. I'll say done. Now when I go to export, we find we've got some extra options down here, which are to do with inner borders and outer borders. So I have one predefined in here. It's my theatre ones, and let me find it. Garrick. Is that the one? Garrick Dropbox. No, not Dropbox. It's DS Color Labs 16 by 12. So I select that, and I can now show you down here what it does look like I've got. It does look as though it's found it or knows about it. Whether it's in there, I don't know. But what you can do is you can specify an outer border, and in this case, I've got two outer borders, or two identical two borders. One which is black, one which is white, which is one of the things you were asking about, Gary, to be able to have both black and white borders on there. You can actually also put annotations on, and you can increase the canvas afterwards. So if this works, and I don't know how many images I have got selected here. I'm just going to pick one image, this one, export, and I can't export it, it won't let me do it on there, which means there's something not right. Yeah, I've not got Mogrify installed if we have a look down here. But if I was to export that, it would be a white canvas with a border, a black border around and some text on there. So that's the tool for it, Gary. It does take a little bit of setting up and a little bit of thinking about with sizes of borders when you specify them. So I hope that's helped on there. Let's have a look. Oh, so many windows open. Right. Okay. Yeah, no additional questions on there. The other question I was asked, which is about reinstalling Lightroom, what needs to be backed up, what needs to be copied. Right. That one was from Richard, and how's the best way to deal with it? Right. Reinstalling Lightroom, you can reinstall it on another machine or whatever. Your catalog is transferable, and what you need to know is where your catalog is located. So I'm going to go back over to Lightroom and see if I can remember how to do this as we go. Right, if you go into catalog settings, it shows you where your catalog is stored here. So if I now click show on there, it goes to the folder that it's in, and everything to do with that catalog is within that folder. So that is the thing that you need to back up, that folder structure that's got your catalog in it. And the key thing is the actual catalog file itself, which is LR-cat. Now mine's the V10 because I'm on version 10, so it's upgraded it to that. We've got a couple of old ones knocking around there. The lock file is exactly that, a lock file, and the WOL file is, again, it's a working file as we're going through. And you'll see here we've got a helper folder, previews and smart previews. And I'll talk about those two folders a little bit later. So, Richard, what you need to do is you need to back up this structure, particularly your LR-cat file, and I would suggest your settings. Depending on where you store your Lightroom settings, they're either with the catalog, in which case you've got the folder Lightroom settings, which you need to back up. You want your smart previews and previews folder, you want those backing up as well. So those are the key things. Then when you remove Lightroom and reinstall it, then you can just point Lightroom at this particular catalog. And there's various ways to do that. If it's set up correctly, you can actually just double click on the catalog file and it will open it, opening that. But when you first install, it might come in with a different catalog to the one that you wanted. So what you would do is you go File, Open Catalog, and then go to the folder that catalog is located in, and it's the LR-cat file that you just need to then point it at. So that's the basics on reinstalling it. Before you do, take on board some of the things I'm going to talk about tonight about performance, because that, I think, will help you as well. And I'm guessing from what you've described about the performance, I think one of the problems you might have is a lack of disk space on the disk that has got your catalog on. and your previews and your smart previews if you're using those. That they recommend you never let that go below 20%. He says that, and if you look at mine, if I go up here, mine's on my L drive, you can see I've definitely got my 20% left there. I need to do some tidying up on mine as well. It's so easy to let that get into the red, and that doesn't help Lightroom at all. It does. Lightroom does like having plenty of space to play with. It likes to have lots of other things as well, which we'll come on to, but space is also one of them. So try and keep an eye out for that, because that might be causing some of your issues. Anyway, that's enough on that. Hopefully that's answered your question, Richard. Just a very brief explanation on that. So nothing else has come in to the chat, so let's move on to our topic for tonight, which is Lightroom Performance and how to get the best out of Lightroom. So, we've got 18 concurrent viewers now. That's great. Good. Right, the first thing to say about Lightroom and performance is it is notoriously poor. There's some, to be honest, I think there's some badly written code in there. It was written and it pulled in code from other applications which were acquired by Adobe. So there was a lot going on, which means it's really struggled. It always has had a problem with performance, and they've never really got their head around it. But they have made improvements. And I know the last couple of major releases, perhaps not version 10, but 9 and 8, I think there were some significant performance improvements. Some of them may not be where you think, and one of the interesting things when you talk about Lightroom performance with people is people actually mean different things when they say, oh, the performance is awful. And it's interesting when you talk to people to drill down into what they perceive as being the poor performance. Because for some people, the poor performance might just be the inability to scroll through things. For others, it might be the time when you're using the adjustment brush and there's a lag to it. For others, I think particularly Richard Bradbury, the performance thing that bugs him more than anything else is the time it takes during tethering to render the image. And for some people, where those certain time lags are not a problem, and they don't mind it taking time there. For others, the performance problem might be it takes forever to import their images. And when you know what the particular bottleneck is, where you're seeing poor performance, there are certain things which can be done to alleviate it, and certain areas that can be tweaked to sort that out. And I'll go through some of the basic principles. And what I want to do tonight is just talk about how it works so that you can try and identify where your problem is and then know, well, if that's where my problem is, this might be the solution for it, rather than everything going to be whiz-bang super hunky-dory fast on there. The other thing to say is performance in terms of changing windows and changing displays and things like that, and finding things and searches and things like that, is noticeably slower and poorer with large catalogues. So if that's the problem, there may be a solution by going to a number of smaller catalogues. I had to do that myself for a couple of years until I did the latest upgrade of my computer to this fast whiz-bang one, which seemed to then handle the large catalogues better. But now, again, I think it's partly to do with that disk space. And this is one of the strange things with Lightroom and with Windows, is the longer after an install, the poorer the performance becomes. I've never really fully got to the bottom of that, particularly with SSDs. So the first thing to say about performance is think about the spec of machine that you're running with, and take what Adobe say with a pinch of salt here. This on the screen is the Adobe spec for your machine for Windows. I'm assuming everyone here is a Windows user. If anybody's a Mac user, then just let me know in the live chat. I'm not a Mac user myself, but there are one or two things I can say specifically to do with Mac, which I might just gloss over otherwise. Right, okay. The processor, fast machine, 64-bit, 2 gigahertz or faster is what they say as the minimum recommended spec. Basically, as fast as you can get with as many cores as you can get with it, and as much memory as you can get will help. Now, they say, oh, you're going to need at least 2 gig of hard disk space for the installation. Yes, you are going to need that. That's on your C drive, that's on your system drive with it. Monitor resolution, they say minimum 1024. It's nigh on, it's not easy to use Lightroom on that resolution. You really do want a much larger screen resolution. I would say the recommended here is really the minimum spec for it. I've tried using it on things smaller than that, which I do when I'm doing presentations so that I can get things onto screen, and it's hard work. GPU, a good GPU will help as well, and they used to say 1 gig minimum to 2 gig recommended. Now they've changed it down to 2 gig minimum recommended for 4 gig. I've gone for 8 gig with mine. I wanted that extra performance on there. And of course you need an internet connection to register and to keep your subscription up to date on there. So first thing about performance is make sure you exceed the minimum and preferably exceed the recommended specs for your machine. I found 16 gig, I really wouldn't want to try and run Lightroom on anything less than that with memory. I'm now at 32, and Lightroom is notorious for memory leaks. And that's again another one of the things they never seem to be able to bottle out. And I found that at times the memory usage will just go up and up and up and up, and then the whole thing will fall over. And it's sometimes worth having Task Manager open just to see how much memory Lightroom is using. Because if it starts to get 87%, 90%, then I would just exit Lightroom and restart it, because it's going to crash. There's no doubt about it. If it gets to that point, it's going to crash. So just keep an eye on that. It's sometimes worth doing that on there. Disk considerations, right. Obviously fast disks are what you want. SSDs if possible on there. Even better than that if you've got something which will take an M.2 SSD, really high performance stuff, go with that. But the thing to think about with your installation is there are 4 different places you can store information that you've got control over with your information. And that's, first of all, where's the software going to be installed? It's where is the catalogue going to be placed? It's where are you going to put your cache? And I'll talk about cache in much more detail and explain about what cache is all about. So where are you going to put that? And finally, where are you going to locate your images? You can control those 4 things. I would strongly recommend for Windows users that, number 1, your software is always installed on your C drive. Take the accepted defaults on that, because I don't trust like Adobe to have got that that right. Questions just come in. Would a 0 RAID drive improve performance? Right. 0 RAID, meaning you are splitting you're splitting across effectively one logical drive, 2 spindles on it. It would improve performance in the same way that using multiple drives would. I would avoid RAID. I had a lot of bad experiences with RAID when I worked in the IT industry, and yes, I know it's improved, but I still wouldn't touch it. I would rather just split things across multiple disks rather than set it up as a RAID drive on there. But let me talk about these 4 areas and I'll explain why you might want to move things. So always put your software on the C drive, the default location. Your catalogue, I would not put on the same drive. If I've got the option, I'd put it on a separate drive to the operating system. And that's what I've got. I have 2 drives in my laptop. One is purely operating system stuff. The other is my local drive, the L drive that you've just seen, and that has the catalogue on it. And that drive, like the system drive, is an M.2 SSD for maximum performance on there. Then the cache, and the images. Well, let's look at the images first of all. Now, you're probably never going to want to put those on SSD long term because it's too expensive to do that. But what you might do, and the way I work, is I have my currently being worked on images on my SSD. And then archive them off to a different drive. Let me go through this in detail in a little bit more. Let's just look at the issue of mechanical drives, hard drives as opposed to SSDs first of all. And if you're using those, you will get the most gain in performance. Well, actually you'll get the most gain by going to an SSD, but if you're stuck with mechanical drives, then split those first 3, software, catalogue, cache, onto different disks. And if you've only got 2 to split them on, software on one, catalogue and cache on another, and then drives the images elsewhere. So try and split it like that if you can on there. If you're working with an SSD, the big performance gain is going from HD to SSD. But there's little to be gained beyond splitting off the different sections onto different SSDs. However, it's expensive to buy a big SSD, so you're probably not going to put your images on the SSD, but it's worth leaving your catalogue, cache and software on SSDs for maximum performance. Keep your images off on external drives, RAID arrays, whatever you prefer on there. As we'll see in a moment, the way it works, the hit on the images is not as high as it is on the other items because it uses the cache where it can instead of going directly to the image all the time. So where it can, it will use the cache for performance. So the most cost-effective way with if your budget and system permits, is 2 SSDs, one for your software, one for your catalog and cache, and then something else, external drive, for your images and your image stores. So if you've got a desktop system, I recommend using internal, I say HDD or SSDs for the store. An internal HDD for your images, SSDs for everything else. For laptops, use external drives, at least USB 3 spec. If you can go higher to the likes of Thunderbolt, then do, or USB-C, then do that, but don't try and do it with USB 2 for storage of your images. My solution, I say, I have the currently being worked on images on my internal SSD for maximum performance, and when I've finished, I just boot them off onto my external drive, which lives at home, so I don't carry that around with me on there. GPU. Now, it's worth making sure you've got a reasonable GPU on there, but you do require, for the Windows users, Windows 10 Anniversary Update version 1809 as minimum spec, or if you're a Mac user, it's macOS 1014 or later, they say. So your GPU, Lightroom has a bit of a history with GPUs, and it doesn't always get it right. Let's have a look at the Performance tab. Hang on, what happened there? Right, yeah, let's have a look at the Performance tab. I can explain a little bit more. So let me get this up on here. So Edit, Preferences, Performance. And if I go full screen, you can see things a little bit better. Right, if we look up here, this is the to do with, well, it's weird really. They've called it under a heading of Camera Raw. It's basically to do with your processing, and by default, Use Graphics Processor is set to auto. I'm going to change it to custom so you can see what's actually going on here. There's 2 parts to using that the GPU does, and this was the thing that confused a lot of people initially. Until perhaps only 2 versions ago, all the GPU was doing was handling display requests. It wasn't handling any of the image processing. Now that's a bit poor really for an image processing program, that it's only using it for handling the displays. Well, they've now solved that, but the GPU is only used when you are for processing when you have selected process version 5 or above on there. So it's the higher versions of the processing version. If I need to, I'll explain that by going into the develop module. So the process version, if you look here, this one, this image is currently set to process version 4, and if I go all the way down to, believe it or not, under calibration, I can choose what process version I want. The latest one, version 5, is the only one that uses the graphics processor. So any of the others, if I was to edit this without changing that process version, I do not get the benefit of the graphics processor with my editing. So just be aware of that. If you've got old images in your catalogue, changing the process version up will help. Now, the problem is, if you're on an older process version, like 1 and then change it. Actually, I don't know that. I'll try and generate something that will show this. I feel like something like that. Now, if I update the process version, the other way to do it is click on the little lightning symbol and give me the option to do it. Watch the screen and see whether the image changes on there. I'm just going to do this one, and I say review changes via before and after on there. Update. Yeah. No. So, yeah, there we go. I need to just do this on the history. So, can you? Hang on. Which version am I on? I'm on version 1. Change that to the latest version. Right. So now you see here that change of process version affects the look of the image. Not on all versions, but it does on some, which is why you probably don't want to do it ad hoc across the whole catalogue, but be aware that when you're on the older versions, you don't get the benefits of the graphics processor. So I just wanted to highlight that one. Let me go back to the preferences again now. Preferences, performance. Change that to custom. So initially you can select it for GPU for display only, but you can't use it for processing if you haven't got the for display. And so if I turn that off, I can't then enable that. I have to have for display first before I can use it for processing on there. Now, there are some possible bugs with GPU, and there's a little bit of advice that people say. If you've got big performance problems with Lightroom, one of the first things to do is to try turning off the GPU. Crazy, isn't it? The reason behind this is the handling of Lightroom pushing over information to the GPU. Now, I believe they have solved this on the latest one, but I can't confirm it either way from experience because I've not seen the problem. The problem is that when they first started using the GPU, what they would do is cancel out of that. If I was zoomed in like this on an image and I was doing some work on it, changing the exposure or whatever, then what should happen is it should only need to send to the GPU the bit of the image that's actually on display, because that's all you're seeing. But Lightroom was sending the entire full resolution image to the GPU, asking the GPU to do the work on it, then sending it back. And that round trip, because it was massive full resolution at that point, was actually taking longer to hand it over to the GPU and get it back from the GPU than it did just to do the processing locally for the little bit that it needed. So it was really badly written code. That's the explanation I was given. But it didn't happen with all GPUs like that for some bizarre reason. I don't understand why. And what you had to do was that if you had poor performance, if the GPU was enabled, you turned it off. If it wasn't enabled, you switched it on and you just toggled it. It was a crazy situation. I believe they've now sorted it, and the correct setting is just leave it on auto and it should work. But if you are seeing problems, it is worth just toggling it to whatever state it isn't at the moment for your installation of Lightroom. Really weird one, but it will potentially help you on there. Right. The other thing to say is you'll get the biggest benefit of using GPU with the larger screens. It's just the way it is. So if you've got a massive 4K screen, you'll get more benefit of enabling the GPU than somebody who's working with a 1024 with a screen on there. So if you've got a large screen, do try and make sure you've got the GPU enabled. It should be by default anyway. The other thing to say with the GPU, as we mentioned on the spec, it really now does require a minimum of 4 gig. Ideally, minimum of 2, ideally 4 gig. Ideally even more than that, but 4 gig I think is reasonable on there. I've got 8 on mine because I'd had enough. I had the option to there because I'm doing video stuff. I needed the extra oomph on that. And you need to make sure you've got support for DirectX 12 on Windows, which if you've got a reasonably powerful machine, you should be fine with all that on there. Let's now talk about caches, previews and smart previews, because there is a lot of misunderstanding here. Before I do, let me just have a look at what's been going on in the chat, whether anything's come up from what I've just been talking about. On here, right. Nope, nothing else new in the chat. I can go back, right, on there and carry on. Right, caches, previews and smart previews, they are all different. And they all do different things, and understanding how they are used will enable you to set your machine up and Lightroom up properly for the best benefits of it. The first thing is what's known as the ACR cache, or Adobe Camera Raw cache. This, in case you don't know, Adobe Camera Raw, which is part of Photoshop, is basically the Lightroom processing engine. And my gut feeling is this is why we have performance problems with Lightroom, because they're keeping ACR as effectively as an add-on to Photoshop, so you can process raw files in there, which means I think it's compartmentalized within Lightroom. Where it shouldn't be. It should be better integrated, I think. It's just a gut feeling on there. But that Adobe Camera Raw that you see in Photoshop is the same engine as you have in Lightroom. Now that, when it works on your images, rather than constantly accessing an 18 meg raw file or a 20 odd meg raw file or even a 50 odd meg raw file, it works off a cached version of it. So it's similar to your browser cache. The idea is it's got that and it bases its work on there, and it stores that somewhere in a location. This is why I say you can control where that is, and getting your cache on an SSD will speed up the performance because of this. And what it does is as you work on an image, as I think you know, the way Lightroom works, it's non-destructive. So it doesn't keep an edited version of the image officially. It keeps the original file and a set of instructions to apply to that file to create your final image, which you can then export. Now, if you were making a small change, like a little adjustment brush, you don't want to have to, the software to have to reapply every single one of those steps. If you've got 50 or 60 steps, you don't want it constantly applying all those. So it applies them, and then it stores what that is where it last was in this cached image. So it only has to then work on that for performance reasons. It's like a browser cache. It speeds everything up. It's local. But that cache is limited in size. And the way it works, it's on a first in, first out basis. So you work on an image, it then saves where the cached version, move on to the next one, it does some work on that, saves the cached version, and so on and so forth as you go through. Runs out of space, oh, what's the oldest one in the cache? I'll throw that out. So if you've only got a very small cache, then, and you're moving about your images quite a lot, you're going to come back to an image where it's just thrown the cache away. So let me just have a look. If I pull up on here, if I move over so you can see what's going on Lightroom. If I've got a whole load of images here, as I have, I edit this one, go into it. It's now created a cached version of it. I don't know whether this will work on here, but let's see. Is it going to pop in? No. Sometimes you can actually see it when you move on to an image. You can see it then just pop in sharpness. Now, I might have, my cache might be big enough for all of these. Find something I haven't looked at for a long time, this one. Yeah, did you see it then? And I can't show you again, but basically that line just went a little bit sharper. That's when it's created the cached version at that point. It starts with a low resolution version that it's got access to, and it then caches it in there. So we've now got that one cached. So if I go back to that one, pops in much, much quicker on there, and it displays much quicker because it's worked on that cache version. Now, if I'm dotting around all over the show, I'm very quickly going to I'm going to go through the oldest one that I want. It's going to get lost. So one way of improving performance, if you move around your images a lot, is to increase the size of that cache. So the way we do that, on the edit, now, is on preferences or catalog preferences? I can never remember on this one. Performance. Yeah, here we go. Camera raw cache settings. You can choose where you put it. I've left mine on the C drive on there because I've got plenty of space on my C drive. But you can. This is where you can move it, and you can choose size. Now, by default, the default on that is 1 gigabyte, which is ridiculously slow, ridiculously small. The minimum you should have on there is at least 5 gig, preferably 10, more if you've got the capacity for it. Mine's 15. So I should, once I've touched an image, I've got a cached version for a long, long time before it gets lost again and gets pushed out of the cache. So that's the first thing that you can do. I generally don't touch the video cache because I don't do video work in Lightroom. So I just leave that at its default and just forget about it. But that one will make a difference if you dart around your images a lot. So that's one thing that you can change. And also, if you can get it on a fast drive as well, that will help improve your performance. Oh, hang on. It's not letting me. Yeah. So right, as I say, that's the graphic of where it is. It's in edit preferences, file handling. So increase that if you've got the space to do it. It's not worth doing it if you're running out of disk space on your C drive. You do need to make sure you've still got that plenty of headroom in there on your disk space. Right, so that's the ACR cache. That is used within the develop module. That's the only place it's used, is within the develop module. It's not used within the library module. In the library module, we use what's known as previews. And don't confuse these with smart previews, which I'll talk about in a moment, because smart previews you use in the develop module. Well, you actually use them in both, but yeah, previews are only used in the library module, and most people aren't aware of that. Generally, most people create them on import, and they are created on import. You generally do that. And the fact that they're only in the library module means people misunderstand, spend time creating these and taking up disk space with them for minimal or no benefit. They are of benefit if you do certain things within Lightroom, and I'll come on to how you define that workflow in a moment. And it is all about what your workflow is as to whether you need things like one-to-one previews or standard size previews or any of the other options which are available on there. Now, the thing to say about previews is one-to-one and standard, even if you don't create them on import, they will be generated on the fly. And this is where some people see poor performance. If I go into the library module over on here, right, I'm over in the library module. I'm going to come down. Now, what I'm going to do, just to show you, is I'm going to take this first few images and library previews. I'm going to discard the one-to-one previews for them. And this is where people start to see a performance, one of the performance things that they see. So if I've got this image, and my machine's probably fast enough that you're not going to notice this, but having not got a one-to-one preview, if I move on to the next one, you should then start to see, is this sort of, yeah, did you see it there on the face, how it suddenly then sort of jumped into focus? I've got to actually go quite fast to be able to show it you, because it tends to work one or two ahead. There, did you see it with that one? I'll go several. There, that's producing the one-to-ones on the fly. But now my machine is sufficiently powerful that it can do it as quick as that. On a lower powered machine, you will have a delay where it appears to jump into the performance on there, jump in on the focus and the resolution on the image with it. These are fairly low resolution images anyway. Most of them are JPEGs. Well, I've got PSDs as well with it. So that it's doing it anyway. But if I'm looking at that, the one-to-one preview is when you are zoomed right in. Let's find something else. So that is a one-to-one preview. That would be the standard preview, right, because it's the screen size one. Or even that would be standard size preview on there. So that's where they're used. They are used just in the library module on there. So now move over to there. So when you are importing images, and yeah, let me just check on this before. I just need to find something I can potentially import. Just a moment. Video. Right, okay. So I'm not going to import these, but I wanted to show you where we're talking about building previews. So here we are in the import dialog and build previews, and let's look at these 4 options: minimal, embedded and sidecar, standard, and one-to-one. So one-to-one is the one I said, it's the full-size ones, which are used only in the Lightroom, in the library module, and only when you zoom in. So what does this mean for us? It means that you only need them if you are going to be zooming in at 100% on your images in the Lightroom module, in the library module. If you never do that, there is absolutely no point getting your machine to generate one-to-one previews. Some people never do, and you spend the time generating a file that is never going to be used. For a lot of people, you're able to do your first cull of images by just looking at screen resolution, in which case all you need then is the standard previews. Which is the option here to change it to standard. But yeah, sorry, I'm flipping between machines and trying to talk at the same time, and making sure I've got 3 displays going on here, all of which in an ideal world, you'd be able to see all of them at the same time. But anyway, all right. Yeah, they are full resolution. They take a long time to generate, or longish time to generate if you're doing all of them, and you only need them when you zoom to 100%. The thing to remember is they are not used in the develop module. So this is one of the other things that people complain about. They go into the develop module and then say, well, it's probably not going to happen on here, that it takes a while when you zoom in on there. Why is it doing that when I've already generated my one-to-one previews? Why is there that delay? Again, it's because it's not using the one-to-one previews here. It's using the ACR cache instead. So it's doing it a different way in the develop module. And again, this is where I was saying my gut feeling is because they keep that ACR bit separate to so it can be used in both Lightroom and Photoshop, that joined up thinking both of what you have in the library module and what you have in the develop module don't work together as they should do. And that's part of the performance problems that we have with Lightroom in there, that bringing the two together like that, or not, as the case may be. So that's one of the things people are saying, poor performance, I can't zoom in, it takes ages, I move on from one image to another. So one of the things they have done to try and alleviate that actually gives another perceived problem as well. When I move on to the next image here, it does that quickly because it's working one, possibly two images ahead. So if I do 3 on, then it takes a little while to come in because it's not working that far ahead. It assumes that everyone works through their images sequentially, and therefore I'm on, oops, you weren't able to see that, were you? Okay, let's go, oh, yeah. It assumes I'm just going to move on to the next image here. So it's already started to do the caching on the ones either side. But if I suddenly jump over to, say, one over here, it's not done the caching, so it then goes ahead and has to do it. But at this point, it's now saying, oh, I've got images either side of me, so if I go straight to it and start working on it, it's doing other things in the background, which is generating cached images for the ones either side. So to get the best performance in the develop module step through your images in turn. Don't do this, oh, let's work on that one. Oh no, now I'll work over here. Now I'll work on that one. Because that's making Lightroom do a lot more work than it's planned to do, because it can't predict where you're going to be next. Whereas if you're going through sequentially, it assumes, oh, I'll get the next image ready for you. So that will help you with your processing and the performance issues that you've got. That's a slight aside on there, but I just remember when we were talking about the one-to-one previews. Right, let's get back to these slides now. Standard previews are small size. They are just screen resolution. They should be at least screen resolution, but you need to tell Lightroom what your screen resolution is going to be for them. There is an auto option available that calculates the previews based on the size of your screen, which is great if you always use the same size screen. If you have a laptop and you have a small screen and a large screen, it's worth setting this manually. So how do we do that? Back over into Lightroom. Sorry, there's a lot of jumping around here. And we go to Edit, Preferences. Is it I have a feeling this is the one on the, I never remember where you set this. Catalog settings, Edit, Catalog settings, File handling, standard size preview, and it's worth, it can be worth manually setting it if you're moving around screen resolution, because otherwise what will happen is it will generate it for the small screen when you're on the small screen, and you go back to it on the big screen, it says, oh right, I need a bigger version of that, and it'll regenerate it again. So it's worth finding one just above. That tells me my screen resolution, 1920 on there. In fact, this has been clever. It's remembered that I'm normally working on that larger. No, that's based on this screen here. So my main screen at home is bigger, so I would go for a 2K size on there. I should really fix it at that. So it's worth again fixing that if you are changing your screen size, because it saves having to regenerate them again, or because it will generate them on import at that size, but then if you then display them on a larger screen, it says, oh blimey, I need a bigger version of that, and it will either present low quality or it will regenerate it, or both on it. So get that size right on there for performance. Right. Okay. The next option on import is one called embedded and sidecar. So again, let me go back over here, cancel out of there, import, go back into the dialog. Right, now what embedded and sidecar option is when you are importing, what that does is, this didn't remember where I was on it, I meant to. What that does is it says, right, okay, I'm just, instead of generating a preview at all, I'm just not going to generate one. I will grab out the little thumbnail that's embedded into all the raw files, and I will use that as the preview. And this is great if you need to get your images in very, very quickly and get working on them straight away. Because if you're generating one-to-one previews, that can take half an hour or so for 200 images. If you've got a very large set of images, so suppose you've been covering an event and you know all you need to do is a call, you can set this, import them with this, and use that image to be able to start culling your images and work out what you want to keep. Now, the downside is, because it's the camera generated image, it's going to look a little bit different to the image that Lightroom would eventually generate in there. If you can live with that, then it's a very, very quick way to get your images into Lightroom and start culling. Very quick indeed. So what I'm going to do, I'll try and show this on here. Under generic. There. Right, I've got all these images, 249 images. If I set my build previews to embedded and sidecar on here and say import, just watch how quick it is on there. Admittedly, these are JPEGs, but here's the bar. Oh, it was doing the move. I didn't want it to do a move. That's going to break things. I'll have to put them back on there. Never mind. Right, okay. So they're already... Are they all in? Let's have a look. It's just fetching the previews from there. Very, very quick. Doing smart previews. And in that period of time, and bear in mind, I'm broadcasting video at the same time on it. Those are now in Lightroom ready for me to work on there. Have I got full resolution on it? If I zoom in, because these are small files, they're relatively quick to do, but I need to find out where it's put those. Go to folder and library. No, not folder and library. Go to show in Explorer. Oh, bother, that's a shame. They're all over the show now, and I don't want that. That's all my images that I use. No, never mind. I'll get over it. Video, generic. Damn, all my images gone like that, misclicked. Never mind, okay, carry on. So it's a very quick way of getting your raw files in there, basically is what I'm saying, and enabling you to get on with your culling. One of the things you can do is you can actually then, in preferences, I find this, and I can't actually remember where this one, yes, I've got it. There we go. Oh, right. Is then to tick this option which says replace embedded previews with standard previews during idle time. And what this does is you'll start off with the images that are embedded in the files, but then when you're not doing anything, it will go, oh, the computer's not doing it. I'll create the standard previews for you. And what you see is, if you're looking at the grid view, you'll see over time, if you just leave your screen on grid, you'll see the images pop into the different settings as the processing of Lightroom takes over. So that's an option that's worth setting if you use that. If you are keen to get on and process your images quickly, work on your images quickly, that one's worth knowing on there. So the final option is minimal. And what minimal does is it just generates the smallest possible preview. Basically, it generates the thumbnails and that's it for the grid view. And that's all it does. So again, another quick way of doing it. It does a little bit more processing than embedded and sidecar for getting things in there, but it's a quicker way of getting images into Lightroom to be able to start processing. Right. So I'm going to have a look at the chat now, see what's been going on there, see whether there's anybody still watching at this point. So what have we got? Oh, we've got Andy joining us. Hi, Andy. Right, okay. So sorry, right, let's go back. So many screens to keep a track of tonight with this. Right, Lightroom on there. Right, smart previews. Now, what are smart previews? Smart previews are different and separate to the standard previews or one-to-one previews. They are basically files which allow you to edit images even if your images aren't there to be edited. So basically it allows you to do offline editing. So in other words, and I can't demonstrate this one at the moment, well I could if I went into my main catalogue I suppose, but basically if you generate a smart preview, then if the image can't be found, it will allow you to carry on editing that image using that smart preview. What are the smart previews? Well, they are smaller DNGs. They use a lossy format to compress it, and they are actually quite small, but they can still start to take up a lot of space on your drive. If you use them a lot, they can gradually take up a lot of space, and they generally sit alongside your catalogue. So this was, right. Yep. So here's the display I showed you earlier. There's my catalogue, my training catalogue, the one I'm in at the moment, version 10. And we can see that I've got a folder with all the previews in, and they are sitting in here. They're not necessarily things you can easily do anything with, but that's where they are. And then you've got the ones which are the smart previews, and they sit in here. And you can see they're actually just DNG files, but they are lower resolution on there, with all the information you need to be able to carry on working. So this DNG file, this file is what's view details is a matter of K. Okay, that probably wasn't a raw file originally. I don't know, it might have been. But these are, find something which, yeah, that one definitely would have been a raw. Oh no, those are ones I've just pulled in on there. Well, that screwed up my my database. Anyway, thank goodness for backups. I'll have to restore that when I get home. Right. So you've got those files there. So what do we know about these smart previews? First of all, to say, if you're working on a desktop and you're never going to have things offline, you have absolutely no need, with one possible exception, which I'll talk about later, for generating smart previews. Because you're not, the images aren't going to suddenly disappear, or shouldn't do. Where they come in handy is if you've got a laptop and your images aren't on your internal drive. So if you were storing images on an external drive, and maybe it was a drive array you have at home with them in, your laptop's plugged into it, but you go out into the field and you want to carry on editing, if you've generated smart previews for those images, and they're stored on your laptop with the catalogue, as you would expect them to be, because that's where they live, then you can carry on working just on those smart previews. And when you come back and it sees the original files are there, you can carry on with those. It's an extra step. You can choose to generate those on import. So let's show you that. And what we've got here, we've got the option to build smart previews on there. So for me, I don't need it enabled because my images live on the laptop, on the internal drive, so no point in producing smart previews for them. Then they're not going to be any use. Now, the thing about smart previews is, as I said, they'll take up space on your disk, and you do need to start managing them when they are not needed. And the easiest way to do that is to create smart collections, and you can't see my slides because I'm on the wrong display. Right, is to use smart collections to find out which images have got them and which ones haven't. So, now I want to go over to the other display. Go over here, cancel that. So to give you an idea on how to do that, I'm just going to go grid, all photographs, and up here I'm going to say new, not up there, wrong one, collections, new smart collection, and smart previews, and match everything where, find it in here, has smart preview is true. So I say save, and that's found 343 images with smart preview out of the 432. So I would look down here and go, you know what, none of those I need the smart previews for. So I highlight those, library, previews, discard smart previews, and that just gets rid of all of those. It's worth creating another smart collection. Smart collection, so no smart previews, and this one has smart preview is false, and create that. So now we can see as we go through here, one lot's going down, the other's going up. You can see actually I already have them in my sanity checks folder there, but that's the way you can do those. So I can now go into here, look down, think, right, these are the images I'm going to want to work off line with, highlight those, library, previews, build a smart preview. And there we go, it's created 20 of them in there. So that's how you create those and what you would use them for. Don't confuse them with any other form of preview. They are used just purely for that use, the ability to work offline. If that's something you're not going to use, don't bother creating them because they're just going to take up space. And if you think you might have created them and you don't know, you're not sure and you want to get rid of them, create a smart collection like that and you can then get rid of them. So having gone through all that, how's my workflow and what settings do I have, and some questions to think about for your own workflow. For me, I do tend to check my focus on images, particularly if it's stock related or travel related. So I will create my one-to-one previews on import. And typically this means it will take a little longer. So that's generally the time I go off and get a cuppa. I convert mine to DNG, that's an entirely different topic, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit on Wednesday in my 2-minute tip on how you convert to DNG. So I say 200 images could take 30 minutes or more to import, which is a sizable delay, particularly if I'm doing theatre photography and I'm getting back late at night and I've got to get these processed before I can go to bed, then it does take a while. So I don't necessarily want one-to-one previews. I'll live without them. I'll go with standard size previews and I won't convert to DNG to improve that, speed up that point of ingesting images into Lightroom. So questions to ask yourself. One question to ask is, do you regularly check images at 100% in the library module? And the emphasis there is in the library module. Because if you're not doing that in the library module, then there's no point you generating the one-to-one previews. Just generate standard size previews instead. If you are going through the library module, and it is quicker to review images in the library module than in the develop module, and this is again one of the ways people are saying, oh, Lightroom's poor performance, it's because you're doing the review of the images in the develop module, and it does take time to go on one from another because you haven't got, you've only got that ACR cache to help you with it. So if you can do that initial cull in the library module, and you've got the previews in there, particularly the one-to-one previews, you can, it's instant zoom in on an image to check. So this, in the develop module, it takes a little while, not too bad on this machine. On here, I think I've got rid of the one-to-ones, but it then would create the one-to-one, but it would be much quicker to move on. It's easier, it's quicker to step through your images in the library module than it is in the develop module. So doing that initial call, do it in the right place, and you'll find that that will help you on there. Another question to ask yourself is, can you make your first pass just at screen resolution? For some people, that is enough. That sort of screen resolution is enough to be able to do their culling on there, and they can go through, and that's absolutely fine. For other people, they want the full, to be able to do it. But if you can do it at screen resolution, then just generate the standard size previews, and that will be much quicker for you. And it doesn't stop you from doing the zoom in, even if you've only got standard size previews. It just means it will only create it at that point. But if you're doing it regularly, create both, create the one-to-ones. And as I said, that's what I do with theatre work. I just do standard size previews, and I go through and do my culling that way, very, very quick, much quicker that way. Next one is, do you need to edit now? If you're doing an event, and you've got thousands of images from it, and you really need to do that culling, you really don't want to be sitting through doing all the generating the previews, and you need to do that now, in which case, if you can live with using the back of the camera previews to do that culling, then just set it to embedded and sidecar, and maybe set that other option so that if there is any idle time, it's generating the standard size previews at that point. So that's going on in parallel in the background. But just be aware that the images may look different when you get them into the develop module, because what you are seeing is the camera's version of doing develop versus Lightroom's version of it. And the final one I want to talk about is how to get an editing performance boost. If you are really stuck with performance in editing, there is a way you can do it. And that is to actually use smart previews. And this, it started off as a workaround that people did in Lightroom. What they did was they had all their images on an external drive, they'd generate the smart previews and unplug the external drive. So it then defaulted to the smart previews because they were much quicker to edit because they're smaller files. And those are what are being accessed in the develop module. So Adobe looked at this and decided, actually, it will give you the option to do it. And you can now generate those smart previews, and then in Lightroom, you can go edit, Preferences, the Performance tab, and enable use smart previews instead of originals when editing. And if you check that, it will use those and you get a performance boost. Now, my machine is sufficiently powerful, I don't need it. There are downsides to doing it, which include the fact that you're not at full resolution. So if you're doing stock photography where you have to check an image at 100% before submission, it's not a good idea to do it off the smart previews. Your quality might be reduced because they're a lossy one, so you might not be able to judge your image perfectly with it. So those are the downsides. For most people, yeah, it will help on there. So that's really my talk about performance and Lightroom, and it's really to do with understanding what these previews are and setting things up to work with your workflow. And this is the thing with Lightroom, as I keep saying, the problems with Lightroom are often generated because people are using it in a way it's not intended. So for example, you're generating one-to-one previews where they're not needed, and you're never using them. All you're doing is taking up disk space and taking up processing cycles for it. So that's the key thing, is think about your workflow, and if then you've still got problems, identify where the performance problem is and ask about that, because there may be workarounds for specific issues. It may have an impact elsewhere, but it's all swings and roundabouts on this. All right, let's have a look what's going on in chat anyway. Let me have a look on my screen. Right, okay. Oh, we've got a new person here, Khalid. Hi, Khalid. Nice that you can join us. Who says that their preference is to cull before import using Photo Mechanic, import only the ones you know you will edit and use. Yeah, a lot of people do that, and that's initially where this idea of the embedded and the and sidecar came from. They nicked the idea off Photo Mechanic. Was what they did with it. So I know where you're coming from with that. As I've said to a few people on here, I have a very good reason for keeping my failures within Lightroom. I've had reasons when I would go back to them, even ones I haven't developed, out of focus, things like that. I've used them, often as training exercise images, and on one occasion to help a client out, because the only shot I got of a stained glass window which had been damaged was just I was setting up the camera, it happened to be pointing at that window, and I'd captured the colours. It was never going to be used for anything else. It was out of focus for a start, but because I'd kept it, we were able to get the colours right on the restoration. So there are reasons why I do. So it's horses for courses on that. Know exactly where you're coming from with it. For me, I like to have everything in one place to do all my work with it. So I would do, if I wanted to go that very quick approach, I would use the embedded sidecar, but it's a very valid approach, Khalid. And thank you for sharing that with the group. So just give a quick plug at this point to my Learn Lightroom channel. There should be a link somewhere within my the main YouTube channel. I think if you're on the main homepage for this channel, down at the bottom there's a link through to the Learn Lightroom one. There's also a link on my Facebook group. There's often links on there. I link to Lightroom videos on there. Do go and subscribe to that, because I'm putting up hints and tips on there all the time about how to improve and how to improve working with Lightroom and how to get the most out of it. So I think, oh, hang on, I've got another question here, one from Gary. How do the two versions of Lightroom operate together, mobile and classic? Well, only two versions, Gary. There's actually three versions. You've got Adobe Lightroom, you've got Adobe Lightroom Classic, and you've got Lightroom Mobile. Mobile going on tablets and on mobile phones. That's quite a big topic. Not one I want to cover Right, is that giving some sound? Yes. Okay. Well, that's never happened before. My Rode Go ran out of power, which is my microphone. Wow. So I've just plugged myself in directly into the thing, so I should be okay. So sorry about that. What was the last thing you heard, folks? If somebody could pop that into the chat, I should be able to carry on. Oh, I'm losing people. Right, saying, yeah, we have sound. What was the last thing you heard, folks? Where were we? Right, okay. Yeah, basically I was saying that the mobile and classic, they're very clunky. They don't work terribly well together. If anyone is planning on using them, I'll go through it on there, but I don't think there's much point me going through it if there's nobody planning to use it, because all I'll be doing is telling you, no, that doesn't work terribly well on there. So if anybody wants me to cover mobile and the synchronization, in the Facebook group, I now have a document which you can all edit to add topics into. So just pop it into there and I'll know you definitely want it then. Otherwise, I'm not adding it in on there at the moment anyway. So sorry about the sound. Let's just wrap up at this point. Thank you all for watching. Sorry about the sound problem. I just want to say thank you again for everyone who's bought me a cuppa. on the show, and thank you particularly to Anthony for today's cuppa. Anyone who buys me a cuppa between now and next Saturday, I will send you the crib sheet with all the notes on from tonight, explaining all the things, perhaps a little bit more coherently than I did on there. Which just leaves me to announce the member photo of the week. And drum roll, one person's not going to be happy with this, because this next week's member photo is the selfie from Peter Saltiel, which I actually chose because compositionally it really works as this diagonal across it on there. I think it's quite a fun photo to have there for the week. So apologies, Peter, I know you won't like it, but that's going up there in a few moments as the photo, the cover photo for the week for the group. So thank you, everyone. Just to say, on Wednesday I'll be doing a feedback session, so if you've got images you'd like me to give feedback on, email them to feedback@ians-studio.co.uk, oh sorry about that, or post them to the Facebook group. And next Sunday our topic is going to be sunsets and sunrises, so get your sunrise and sunset photos in the Facebook group or emailed to me this week, and we'll discuss those a week on Wednesday on there. But I'll be giving you advice on sunsets and sunrises next Sunday night. So until then, thank you for watching, folks, and until then, really just all I can say is keep making great photos, and I shall see you next time. Okay, false ending, alternative ending coming up for the cut down version. Thanks for watching this cut down version of Ian Studio Live. The full version's now over in the Academy. Some of the highlights are here on this YouTube channel and over on my Lightroom YouTube channel, so go and check that out. And if you want to join the Academy, that's all the details over the shoulder. It's only £6 a month or £60 a year. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep making great photos. Bye for now.